I just kidding. We're already live. The numbers start clicking. I just wanted to put it out there. So, folks, hope you're having a great day. Hope you're having a great week. I got a lot of things we're going to talk about, or at least we're going to try to. As most of you know, in most of the states now, everybody's running out to vote. Now, I just tell you, it's unbelievable about how many days we get to vote. How many days does it take for anybody to vote? It only takes me an hour or less. Depends on how long the line is. But they're going to give some states 45 and 60 days, and in North Carolina, Lord knows, it just seems like it never ends. It seems like vote, vote, vote until you can't vote no more. I guess. Well, let's hope that they get it right this time. Thinking that they will. At least hope so. Um, there's always those few places in the state that always have issues, and people say, well, there might be a problem. Yeah, well, there might be a problem if the same people are having the same problems and the same votes every time it pops up. And I mentioned Durham, North Carolina, because they make news nationally. CNN. It seems like every time there's an election, there's something that goes on in Durham, North Carolina, that they have to delay or postpone, or before it's close the polls at 8 o'clock or 7:30. Next thing you know, they have to go bring it before the judge and keep it open for an hour and a half for this big, long, big crowd that they have. That when I worked at the sheriff's department, I drive by, I would never see that crowd they keep talking about. I always thought that was kind of interesting how they would want to keep their polls open and they'd call out certain polls. And then I would drive by these polls, and lo and behold, there was nobody at them. Who are they really keeping the polls open for? I don't know. It's always kind of a strange bet there, just craziness. But this is a crazy political season, so let's think about that. Um, you see all these commercials on there, and you figure out what you can and what you can't believe, and it's always odd to me that people make decisions, especially judges. They'll make a decision and they don't own that decision. And decisions that they make do affect people down the road in so many different ways. So when they say one thing about it, and I did it for this or I did it for that, I don't really care why you did it. The fact is, it's going to have the biggest effect on the most amount of people, simply because that's what happens. It's no big secret. Well, you take a case where a judge rules in the favor of a pedophile or a child molester or anything like that, and because they want to protect their right, they want to protect their rights. Lo and behold, they may do that, but in the long term, are they not causing issues for the children that were victimized, or future children being victimized? So if you see me, I'll have to reach up. Everybody's messaging me on my phone, so I guess that's the standard. Nobody can just hit you up on your phone right in the middle of your shows. So, folks, um, I'm not going to be able to answer the text quite as fast. Or if you got any questions, I'll be glad to answer that for some of you that have that information. So, again, we'll move on with the show. But anyway, so if you think about it, you have these decisions that are being made, and they do affect everybody. And you have one candidate running for Senate, and she's, oh no, that's not going to happen. No, I didn't do that. But she really doesn't know. The ramifications of her decisions will allow things to happen. You know, they want to sex predators, child predators. They want these folks, the pedophiles, they wanted them to register, yes, register, but also put a tracking device wherever they go. And of course, if you have a judge that's not in favor of that, and then all of a sudden you see a commercial about a predator and he's moving around town without a tracking device, can that really happen? Sure, it can happen. If you had the device on, you would know where they are. The reality is, when you're a judge, you make a decision, and that decision sticks. You own it, no matter right, wrong, indifferent, good or bad. You own that decision. So to put a disclaimer on it is ridiculous. Um, Explain your position all over again to the public and let them know why you made that decision. And coming back with other nasty commercials or anything like that. That's just typical politics. But explain your decision. Stand by your decision. If it's something that had a negative effect, you still own it. But explain why you did what you did. Your voting contingency has a right to know. Your potential voters have a right to know why it was or was not a good decision. So you can play politics and you can hide from that. Just like these politicians now, it's amazing how it's all defund the police for almost 3 years. Defund the police, redirect, defund, redirect. We hear that at the White House. Well, we never said defund, but the president did say redirect. Now, folks, even in elementary school, children understand that they don't care if the money doesn't show up. The fact is, it doesn't show up. And if you give it to somebody else before it was supposed to show up, the money still didn't show up. And you're still defunded for any organization out there. You can't disclaim it because you renamed it. You just can't do that. Well, you can. Government's really good about that, and they will. So when you look across the spectrum of some of the decisions that are being made, it's pretty evident that they come out without any forethought. And it's all politics, the game of politics. And defund the police. Whoever thought law enforcement organizations would actually endorse candidates that have mastered the ability to hide the fact that they promoted defund the police? And then stand up in uniform on a commercial and try to spin it another way. To have someone who wears a uniform that looks like a police officer's uniform, but is a security chief, company police, is very disingenuous for any candidate to have that done. It's very distasteful. It's wrong. It just represents to the naked eye law enforcement when in reality the individual's not representing law enforcement. He may be representing his company police. He may be representing his security group. And there's nothing wrong with that, but he needs to say that. Don't leave the identity that I am a police chief when you're a self-promoted police chief of your own company. You own your own company. You're a CEO. Talk about disingenuous. And then, and it comes into a commercial says, so-and-so, you were implicated. You were implicated. You lined up with this group and you were implicated in this. Implicated is not a conviction. Implicated is not an arrest. Implicated is a fancy little word salad. Word salad, mixed time and time again to be disingenuous. That's politics, folks. I'm talking a lot about politics. I understand what politics do. People can say, do, act, anything they want to. Yes, I ran for office. Yes, I said what was on my mind. Yes, I stood for what was on my mind. I stuck with what I had to say. I didn't back down from my position. I stood tall and took it. If people didn't like it, I still said it because I wasn't going to throw any word salad out there to make it sound any different. And too many times candidates and their reps will do exactly like that. But let's get, for a police organization who claims to be supporting their membership, it's astonishing to me that they're willing to jump out there and jump on the train of the politician who, when defunding the police movement was out there, either promoted it really, really hard, or they just hid in the wings, hoped that it would blow over them. But if you asked them anything about it, they always had no comment. And that's politics, folks. But if they're not for you, those politicians were against you. You got to remember, law enforcement officers were being murdered. They were being ambushed. They were being killed. Use any terminology that you want to. and they were being set up by these anti-police organizations. And I'm not even going to dignify those organizations by calling them out by name. Everybody knows who they are. Everybody knows who they were about. And everybody clearly knows what they did. And that's just the bottom line, folks. It's what they did. Now, I was talking to a reporter the other week on Reuters, and she wanted to ask me about a candidate. And the only thing they started talking about, well, they defund the police, folks. And I said, yeah, everybody wants to skip over that. Now you want to talk about January 6th, that somebody attended the rally. But last time I checked, attending a rally anywhere is not reason for arrest. Never has been. Just because you went somewhere and things went way out in the field somewhere and things started happening, which I'm not even commenting on all that stuff. I didn't like what happened. I'll be real clear. I didn't think it should have happened the way it did. What went down there, I wasn't there, never planned on going there. But the people who did go there, I know went there, and they were very peace-loving people. They would not do anything to disrupt our country. They would not do anything to cause issues among themselves or for anybody else, because that's who they are. There were people that got involved in that nonsense that should have never been anywhere near that. There were people in there that, it was from both sides. It wasn't just a one-sided thing. If you looked at the crowd, you could tell that. And look, there were people there that just flat out, had some bad thoughts and things they wanted to do. But nobody forced them in there with a firearm. Nobody told them to bring whatever it was and bring whatever they wanted to, or do whatever they wanted to do, and take weapons into the Capitol and stuff like that. Nobody. You can't be responsible for what somebody else says. If I used to tell my kids, if Joe Schmo tells you to jump off the bridge, that means you're going to do it? No. Well, guess what? When you grow up, the same thing stands. If you jump off that bridge because somebody tells you to, or even suggests you to, and you do it, whose fault is that? Think about it. You can't deny your own actions. If you do it, you own it. And it gets back, same thing with the politicians. If you do it, own it. What is it? 47 people, 47 politicians in state government in North Carolina signed a pact together about one pact does it all, for everything from a no bond, I believe it was, to allowing people out without bond, for serious crimes. This thing was a generated activity from that groups that I'm not going to mention their names. And then to sign something saying, yes, as a group, this is the rights. This is another Bill of Rights type thing for anybody charged with anything. And yeah, but we didn't say defund the police. However, everything in there was a strong indicator. It was all against law enforcement. And it did say, take away funding. Did he use the word defund the police? So when they say, yeah, we never used the word defund the police. No, they didn't. They did the word salad again. You go back and you read this entire article of what they're talking about, and it just goes forever. It's unbelievable, some of the terminology that they were using. It was North Carolina legislative Democrats pledged to defund. Now, 47 Democratic members of the state House and candidates running to join the Democratic caucus, they signed this pledge. Find that hard to believe? Yeah, they signed it. But then they wanted to call it something else. They didn't want to tell you what it was. It's defund the police, restrict the ability of law enforcement to obtain basic protective equipment, and strip citizens of Second Amendment rights with no due process. The pledge includes ending cash bail and the assignment of court fees and costs, one which would return some of the dangerous criminals back to the very streets they were locked up from. And the other would further defund the police by eliminating revenue for police training and police retirement, I mean, 8 of the Democrat state senator members and candidates also signed the pledge, while not all current Democrat House members signed the pledge. Think about it. If all 47 of the pledge signers were elected, they would represent 85% of the current 55% of the 55 Democrats in that state house. Think about that. They would represent that. That's a pretty big number. How detrimental do you think that would be to protecting law enforcement? Well, that was 2 years ago. Exactly. My point made. That was during the defund the police. If you have 55 Democrats and 47 of those Democrats were in favor of defunding the police, 8 of them decided that they didn't want to go in that direction, or was going to be very limited on what they did. They stayed away from that issue. But the majority of them did not. And I think back, serving 35 years in law enforcement, as I did, I sit there and I think back of the officers that we lost along the way, the funerals that I attended, the honor guard that I attended as an honor guard member to some of these funerals. And I think that these officers were killed in the line of duty. Who would have thought 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, that we would all of a sudden jump up and say, oh, let's start defunding the police? Who came up with that nonsense? I'll tell you. It's those anti-police groups. Those police groups have been here a long time. They're not just starting here. They have been working on this for years, just like you're in your schools, and how the education has kind of become more of an indoctrination education. It's gotten away from the reading, writing, and arithmetic. It got away from the history of what life is, how America was established. Sure, it was some tough times, and it was brutal. But things were brutal everywhere. When you establish a settlement, you establish yourself into a new country, a new world. You don't know what the weather is going to be like. You don't know who you may or may not meet. And were they perfect back then? Absolutely not. But they were normal in comparison to everybody else. You can't sit back and say, oh, 250 years ago, this was happened. So now let's go ahead and pay up, folks. It doesn't work that way. The Wild Wild West was the Wild Wild West. Just because you had these, outlaws out there killing and shooting and roaming the range and doing what they were real live outlaws and cowboys, and they were a little bit of everything back then. And they didn't have the opportunity that we had. Look at the things that we have today. Look at how stringent and strict the laws are, if they're enforced. Take notice I said if they're enforced, because right now we've got a system that's broken. I mean, think about it. If you look at what's going on across this country, our system's broken, folks. We don't have an opportunity other than to elect officials, or I can't even use the word unelect, but to get rid of officials every 4 years. So that means that 4 years, they can come in and wreak havoc. They could come in and just tear the world apart, do what they want, when they want, how they want. And what happens? Anything they want to happen. It's somebody told me the other day, said, I'm kind of worried. I never thought I was a conspiracist, but I'm just looking at things now and I'm thinking, that doesn't make sense. These things are happening for a reason. I'm not a conspiracist. I don't believe in a lot of conspiracies. I do believe that people make decisions to make things happen, because that's the nature of the politics. If you're not with me, you're against me. And just like in the defund the police movement, that's a cause that you're not with me, you're against me. And if you're not defending law enforcement, trying to keep them from being killed and ambushed, then you're against that way of life. And you're no better than anybody else as a politician out there. If you can't stand for law and justice in the Constitution, you shouldn't be holding that office in the first place. Because you got to remember, that office belongs to America. That office belongs to North Carolina. That office belongs to whatever state you're running in. And that office belongs to the people. And you report to the people. It's your America, but treat it like it's your America. We're not globalist here. If you look at some of the things going on, that's kind of the way that many of the countries want us to run into. They want us to be the king or the queen of globalism and pay their way. Of course, that's what we've been doing for years. Of course, when we had a president decided that wasn't going to happen, lo and behold, we started becoming a little bit more prosperous. When we became energy independent, we became a lot more prosperous. And unfortunately, you couldn't have planned the destruction of this country or the attempted destruction of this country any better than all the things that's been going on the last couple of years with the way the election went. And we talked about it back when it was going on. And it was just a cluster, and everybody knew what was on the horizon if things turned out the way they did. So they did, and now we're having to deal with that. So this is just the facts, folks. It's not Republican. It's not Democrat. It's not independent. What it is the facts. If you'll look at the facts across the country and in these states, look at these cities that have the biggest crime rate, and you'll realize then who's in charge of that crime rate. Who doesn't go after the criminal? Who actually facilitates the whole process for the criminals to get away with what they get away with and allow them to get out of jail with no bond? Anybody been watching the news in the last couple of days where they had all the assaults on law enforcement officers in Philadelphia and how much the crime rate there is going up and what's going on with the nonstop assaults on police officers? What society did we wake up in to say that was okay? I never thought we would do that. Unfortunately, this is what it's turned out to be. And why? That's because we have a new generation, that they don't think for themselves. They allowed everybody else to think for them, see? They let everybody else, influence their decisions by not their agenda, but the agenda of the folks that they follow. Because those folks can be very convincing. And those folks can change the history of things. Those folks can say anything they want when they want and make it believable. And you ask yourself why? It's because they intend to. They practice that. It's a performance to them. So it's all the intel that comes in, folks. I can tell you so much intel that come in, over the years that I used to look at and just shake my head. Were they doing anything wrong? No, they weren't doing anything wrong, but they were brainwashing the youth of then and now the youth of today by giving them a whole new indoctrinated rendition of history, or reasons of why they should be mad at their mother and their father. Because remember, in a generation of misguided youth hanging out in the gangs, the word good and bad meant totally opposite with how it was used, good versus bad. If you were a good gang member, that means you're probably out there wreaking mayhem, breaking into houses and bringing them all the money and all the things that are of the valuables, so they could go out and sell them and make more money. That's a good, but to the parents that's bad. So when somebody asks the kid, "Have you been good?" "Yeah, I've been good," but the good took on a new meaning because that's what they were taught in the gangs. So when they went home and they did all these things they were doing, they were good to the gang, but they were bad by the time they got home. So these kids, their minds got all twisted up. And then I'm gonna say something that's not. Parents, you send your kids to college to get an education, and they want to go to certain schools, but it is ultimately up to you if you're financing that education to make sure they're getting the education that you're paying for. They get that indoctrination anywhere, but it's up to you to make sure they get an education. And if you don't, that's your fault. If your child is or student is in college and they come home and start talking crazy stuff, makes absolutely no sense of what they're having to say, why would you send them back to that same college? Why would you put them back anywhere near that college? Why would you not take them out and find somewhere else for them to go? Would you send your child to kindergarten if you had people in there saying some things that didn't need to be said, talking about issues? Think about it. Homeschooling brought out a whole lot of stuff. It brought a whole lot for America. It brought up a whole lot for North Carolina when everybody was looking at what these children were being taught, what they were being taught to say, and what they were being taught. That's horrendous. If you looked at just the agenda of what they had to go through with during the COVID, of shutting down the schools and doing homeschooling. That's and homeschooling has put us back 2 to 3 years. And the reason it's put us back, everybody thinks, well, it's the education. Exactly right. We didn't get education to our children, but we did get a whole lot of indoctrination. They did get plenty of that, which was the basis and the foundation for schools now in today's times. Hit them early, hit them young, and hit them with a lot. And you can sway a young mind to believe what you want them to believe. And don't think that's not intentional, folks. Don't think that it's not intentional, because it is. I heard I'm not even going to call her name out, but the one that was in charge of all the teachers, she's on the radio today, and she was talking about, things that need to be done. Well, she wants to act like she's on the side that everything's got to be fixed, and none of it was her problem, none of it was the union's problem, none of it was all this. But reality is, she was the one negotiating with the CDC. She was the one getting her way and the union getting their way. And what did it do to our children? What did it do to your children in school right now? These children, some of them are 2, maybe even 3 years behind. How are they going to catch that up? Are they going to pass them up and just send them up to school, and when they graduate, they'll graduate with a 10th grade degree? I don't know. I know one thing is very unfair to the children, to the students going to school. And the parents were sitting back listening to what was going on. And that's the only reason that we knew what was going on in those schools is COVID. Well, COVID was a bad thing. It sure shed a lot of light on the school system. So, folks, if you think about that, that was COVID's horrible. It was horrid. But the reality is, it did shine a lot of light on a lot of things that were going on in our schools. And the parents were sitting back and letting it happen because they had no clue. We trust our schools. We trust our teachers. We trust them with our children. We trust them with our grandchildren. And we hope and believe that they're going to do great by them, because we want to do great by them. And we want to see children prosper. Your children, my grandchildren, your grandchildren. Teachers have children. I'm sure they want their children to prosper. But they were going down a path that prosper was not. It just wasn't happening. It was not happening. The only thing was happening is they were found out on what they were doing, what they were trying to accomplish. And they did exactly what they did until they got caught. Our lieutenant governor, what a man. All I can tell you, what a man he is. He tells it like it is. He doesn't pull any punches. I've said this before. He's a lieutenant governor now, but I sure think and hope that he's looking at the governor's seat really, really hard. Because I know there's a lot of people looking at that seat for him. And he's a man of integrity. His entire family. If you see him, you see his family, you can tell that he's a foundation. He's a rock in that family. As is his wife, our state first lady. Think about that. Awesome, awesome, awesome is all I got to say. And the lieutenant governor was able to bring a lot of this stuff to light that nobody else wanted to talk about, because he will stand toe to toe. He will challenge these what we'll call the falsisms and all the stuff that's put out there across North Carolina. And we need people like that. We need some more leadership. We need some more people like that in leadership that's going to stand up. Because when he stands up, we need to have people standing behind him going forward with him. We need sheriffs across this state. We need police chiefs across this state to work with the governor, lieutenant governor. I'd say work with the governor right now, but we won't even go in that direction. But the reality is Lieutenant Governor Robinson is more than just a 3-day press conference when something happens bad around a family and officer's been shot or killed. It's not who he is. He's there day in and day out. And he's there for law enforcement. And law enforcement's there for him. And we finally got somebody in state government that traveled all 100 counties and got out and met folks. No matter how small or how big the crowd was, he made sure he got there because he understands to be respected, to be the man he is. He has to walk the walk and talk the talk, and that's exactly what he's done. And if he wouldn't be lieutenant governor today. And I'm gonna tell you, he's the real deal. Dan Bongino, I think, said it. He's the real deal. You're not going to get any better than Mark Robinson. Every state needs a lieutenant governor, Mark Robinson, and then eventually a governor, Mark Robinson, and then you never know, maybe to the next spot. And I don't mean stop in the Senate. So you just never know where that's going to come up, where that's going to head. But folks, we're in some tough times right now. Tough times. And tough times sometimes take some tough measures. When you went to the grocery store last week or you filled up your gas, how did you feel? Morale's not up. Prices are. Paycheck earnings are not up in the sense of the word, but groceries are. For everything that you got, you lose now more, even more. And I'm sitting there thinking in that process, how do we keep more of our money and keep it from the government and put it with our children? Keep it in our families, take care of our families. Makes it very difficult, especially with inflation the way it is. But again, let me ask you this. What do you think is going to happen when you get to 87,000 IRS agents, all armed now with firearms? What do you think that their initiative is supposed to be? What do you think that their charge is going to be from the federal government? They're giving IRS agents firearms to collect money, property, taxes. Now, that's kind of interesting because didn't the King of England do that too? To his very many in his kingdom, the taxes would be collected, or the bodies would be, one of the two. So my question to you this is, what are we going to do with 87,000 IRS agents? Are they going to tax our firearms? And when you can't afford to pay the crazy tax they put on them, they're going to send an IRS agent to come pick them up? Or are they going to tax your rounds for your firearms? And if you don't pay that crazy tax or whatever it may be, are they going to send one of those or two of those or three of those or four of those or a SWAT team of IRS agents carrying firearms to come and collect? And what if the inflation's so bad and we still have a president that has no clue how to deal with inflation? What are they going to take? What are they going to do? How bad is it going to get? What will a family do to protect themselves? and their constitutional rights. You know, like I said, I'm not a conspiracist person by no means. I'm just asking the questions. Why do we have, or why are we going to have 87,000 IRS agents armed? Makes absolutely no sense. Yeah, it's kind of like some of these politicians running for office. Some of them shouldn't be running. It makes absolutely no sense too, but they're still going to run. More power to them. Um, all across this nation, all across everything that goes on in different states, there's a lot of tight races. But this election is going to be a defining moment for our country. We're either going to be on our way back to mending or continuously on the way out for spending. And what's to come back on that when you zero out your checking account and you have no money to buy anything? The banks will have theirs. The government will have theirs. And while many of these folks in the political world believe that you can spend your way out of a problem such as inflation, that is incorrect. That is a negative, Houston. Doesn't happen that way. You know, things tough, families are hurting, and the only way that you can do it is you got to lower the prices. You can't leave things in a product chain just because you want to force people to get away from fossil fuels. You can't treat people, well, you can treat them like I'm your daddy, do what I tell you to, and shut up and sit down, because I think that's what a lot of Americans feel like now. So my question to any of you guys out there listening, how's your life been? Ask yourself, how is your life been? How are things for you? Is your checks got bigger? Your grocery bill got less? Your gas and heating less? Anybody's things that went down cost wise, let us know. It would be great to hear, but we all know that everything has gone up to such a high rate that it has caused a big struggle with the American family, with the North Carolinian family. This isn't just a state issue. This is a countrywide issue. Even down in Florida, where they didn't shut everything down. Kudos to them. They kind of kept on driving, kept on going. You know, they've been hit with the inflation too. But the reality is the way they handle things. I would venture to say that it's looking that the consequences aren't as great for them because they didn't follow suit with the country. You know, Governor Ron DeSantis handled that. I don't know if anybody's seen that that new meme out there. It says DeSantis Airlines, and it shows his name on it and pointed to the north. Yeah, that was a meme. Some of y'all might think it's funny. I thought it was kind of cute. You know, I understood it right away when I saw it. But again, we can talk about some of these things that's going down at the border. I mean, you know, to let people cross that border freely without any resistance is horrendous. And then to top it all off, look at the amount of fentanyl coming across that border. How much fentanyl is coming across that border? You know, it's over 100,000 deaths now from that mess. And we still have a government that looks the other way, like things don't really exist. Makes absolutely no sense. So it makes no sense whatsoever. So I'm gonna play a video for you right now, and I may have done it before, but I'm gonna do it again because I want you to see our North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. He is the man with the plan. If he can't do it, no one can, because the man has the integrity, the foundation, the wherewithal, the intelligence. I mean, he's the package for who we need now in our state. He's our warrior. He's our champion. Without further ado, he's Mark Robinson, and I'm going to play that video for you right now. Hope you enjoy the video, but listen to his charge should he become the governor of North Carolina eventually.
What law enforcement should look like in our state. You know, I've never been a type of politician to make promises. I never stood on the stage and said, I promise you that if I'm elected, I'll never do that, except this once. Now I'm gonna tell you the promise I'm gonna make. And you know, any of y'all know me know that I believe that God is organizing my footsteps. And if God should see fit to make me the governor of this great state, if it is his will that I serve the people of North Carolina in that capacity, then I make this solemn promise. Might not be day one, might not be day two, but I guarantee you by day 3, we're gonna call a press conference. And that press conference is gonna be me, and that press conference is gonna be the chiefs of police from across the state, the sheriffs from across the state, the DAs from across the state, and I'm gonna line them up in front of me, and I'm gonna point out to the cameras, and I'm gonna tell the criminals and the thugs and the rioters and the bombers and the burners and the statue puller downers, it's a new day in North Carolina, and you will not be tolerated anymore. Law and order is back in the house, and somebody is here to stand up for these men and women in blue that put their lives on the line for us. We will no longer tolerate your foolishness, and if you don't believe me, just try it. It's high time in this nation and in this state that we stood up once again for law enforcement. The dreadful effects of what has happened since this whole era of defund the police, we're not talking about something that's just cost money. We are literally talking about something that has cost lives, destroyed lives. And it is time for elected officials to get a spine and a backbone and once again stand behind the men and women of law enforcement so that they can be proactive in what they do, not reactive in what they do. And I make that solemn promise now that that will happen. And we have another vision. We have another vision out there on the horizon. We got a vision where when a man or woman retires from Fort Bragg, Camp Lejeune, one of our Air Force bases, that they won't look for any place else to live except right here in North Carolina. That they'll want to put down roots right here in North Carolina, because our vision is that North Carolina would be the most veterans-friendly state in the nation. That all the other states in the nation would be looking at North Carolina trying to figure out how we're doing it and what we're doing. We took a big step towards that in the General Assembly this session by ending the pension on military veterans' retirements. That is a great step to take, but it is only the first step in making North Carolina the gold standard of veterans care in this nation. It is our vision to make sure that we give back to our veterans as much as they've given to us in their service. There's also another vision that we have, and that vision is this, and it's plain and simple, that when you go down to vote, number one, you have to do the same thing you have to do at the bank to withdraw some money. You have to whip out your wallet and get out your ID. There's no sense whatsoever in allowing the most sacred right under our constitutional republic, our democratic process, to not be guarded by making sure you are who you are when you go to vote. And these lunatics out here who make the argument that because my skin is brown, I'm too stupid to get a free ID to vote. We have to outright reject notions of foolishness like that. We can't be afraid to do it anymore. When people bring up those subjects, we can no longer look down on our feet and kick the dust and say, well. We have to look right at that person and say, that is ridiculous. That is ridiculous. It's nonsense. And call them out on their foolishness and tell them, how racist are you to think that black people can't get an ID to protect their vote? We get IDs to do everything. And that argument, well, it's a constitutional right, you shouldn't need a vote. You shouldn't need ID because it's a constitutional right. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Have you ever read those words? They're in the Constitution. But I have to show ID to buy a gun. And here it is. I should have to show an ID to buy a gun because it maintains the integrity of our Second Amendment. To maintain the integrity of our vote, we should have to show an ID and prove who we are before we put our names down to vote. I also see a vision when it comes to election integrity, that when you go down to vote, you have confidence in the system itself, that you have confidence in the machines that you are putting your votes into, and you have confidence in the people who are tabulating your votes. It's high time in this nation that we stop playing around with this issue. You know, in 2016, when President Trump won, the left said that Russia interfered in the election. And now, many on our side are saying that this vote was not legitimate. So here it is. We both said that the system is broken. Why don't we all get in and get it fixed, finally, once and for all? Not for Democrat or Republican, but for this constitutional republic we call America. It's time to fix this system, and it's time to stop kicking the can down the road. It's time for some of us to stand up and really put some work into election integrity. And that's a vision that I see, and I know that we can do it because we're Americans. We can do anything. All things are possible to the people of this nation because all things are possible to those who believe in God. And so, another vision that I have this vision that never again in this nation, ever in this nation, anybody on any job, any agency, anywhere, will be able to tell you as a North Carolinian that you must put some drug in your veins. The word mandate is not compatible with the word freedom of choice. It is not compatible. I likewise have a vision that when you go to your doctor, you tell your doctor, I need a test because I don't feel well, and the test comes back positive for a certain virus, and your doctor and you decide that you want to be treated with that drug that nobody wants to say the name, ivermectin, that's available to you in whatever quantity you and your doctor deem fit. In short, what I vision is a state where medical freedom exists between a doctor, a patient, and their God. And that's it. Not any government entity, not any governor, not any city council, not your boss. But you and your doctor and your family make those decisions. And that's what we need to see happen in this state. That's what we need to see happen in this nation. And those are the visions that I see for this nation. A lot of people might look and think, well, you know, a lot of stuff you said is not going to be possible. Not going to be able to get medical freedom and probably not going to be able to do anything about election integrity. You know, fat chance on getting constitutional carry in this state. Anybody that says that, I would say this to them. You go back and you look at America's history. Go back and look at her history. I would imagine there was probably a British general standing on Bunker Hill looking down at all those farmers and blacksmiths and preachers and common folk going, you know, mate, I don't think these guys have a snowball's chance in hell. I really don't. There was probably some Japanese in the war room who were looking at pictures of Norman Rockwell and saw pictures of flappers dancing in the 20s and said, you know, if we drop a couple of bombs on these guys, they'll give up because they don't have a fighting spirit like us. You see, people have always underestimated the United States of America. Those who would seek to destroy her have always underestimated Americans and the United States of America. But here it is. America is just made of different stuff. Americans are made of different stuff. Nowhere on this planet will you find any other nation where people are made out of the same type of stuff that we are made out of in America. The spirit of freedom that exists here, and the absolute spirit of courage to stand up for that freedom. You will not find that anywhere else on the globe, which is why all nations, when it comes to fighting for freedom and standing up for freedom, when it comes time to fight, they all turn their eyes towards the West and look towards America and Americans, because we are different. We are a good different. We're a good different because we're made of different stuff. And we have that vision. We have that vision that looks out and says, not how things are, but how they can be. And not just how they can be, doggone it, how we can make it be. And I can assure you, in 2022, Republicans in the state of North Carolina are determined to make it be so. We are determined to see these visions come true. We've done great things since 2010, but I can assure you, should we win in 2022, and we will win in 2022 on all fronts. North Carolina has just begun to see its best days. We've just begun to see our best days because Republicans have just begun to fight. We have just begun to fight. And so I encourage you to stand up and win in 2022. Let's get that supermajority. Let's send that good Republican to the Senate to do the good work in Washington, D.C. Let's send Republicans to school boards and county commissioners all across the board. Let's send conservative Republicans in every seat that they're running for. Let's wrap this state up in red for 2022. And then we got 2 years to do some great work under, more work under Republican leadership. And then we got 2024 coming right around the corner after that. We got a good chance, more than likely, we will get rid of President Joe Biden. Don't want to spend a lot of time on him tonight, because honestly, he's not spending a lot of time on his job. So there's really not anything to talk about. We got a good chance of getting rid of him and replacing him, quite possibly again with somebody else much better. We don't know who that's going to be yet. I suspect it's going to be the man we saw on the screen tonight, but we'll see. But here in North Carolina, we have a chance to finally be rid of old King Cooper. Actually, not a chance. He can't run again, thank God. But we certainly don't want a Cooper Point 2 in a fellow named Josh Stein. I don't know if he's going to run or not, but if he does, we certainly don't need Cooper Point 2. What we need in office is a good, strong conservative that's got some vision, to understand what the people of North Carolina want and need, and is going to fight like hell to make sure it happens. That's what we need. Now, don't start clapping, because I don't know who that could be. I don't know who it could be. I've heard a few names thrown around. I've heard a few names thrown around. But like I said, God is in control of this thing. And be his will for me to be the governor of the state, then we'll follow that will. And if we sit in that seat, I can tell you right now, we will continue to fight for all the principles that you and I believe in. We will wrap this state up in red, and we will do what is right by our forefathers, by our ancestors, by the folks that are living now, by our children, by our grandchildren, and by the generations after them, because our principles work. Their principles, their ideas fail. Let's put our principles in office and make sure that North Carolina is safe and prosperous and always, always wrapped up in red. God bless you all. God bless Wake County, and God bless the great state of North Carolina. Thank you.
And there you have it. The one and only Mark Robinson, our Lieutenant Governor for North Carolina. Folks, if that does not inspire you and motivate you to go out and vote, if that doesn't inspire and motivate you to look ahead, to be able to fix the mess our country's in, our state is in, if he cannot motivate you, then the only thing we can do is take you to one of his get-togethers and listen to him in person, or have the conversation with him. He's very approachable. The man he is Mr. North Carolina, and he will always remain North Carolina. That's who he is. He served our country in the military. He's been out there. He is the guy that's going to be running in with you and running out with you, even if he has to carry you all the way back out. He will not turn his back on you. He will not leave you hanging. He's a politician, kind of, sort of, in a way, but he's not your typical politician. Matter of fact, I'm going to go as far to say he's not even a politician. He is a citizen of North Carolina who wants the best for each and every one of us. And I know for a fact that while he's been elected, that he wants the best for all of North Carolina. See, once you're elected, you represent North Carolina. You don't represent one group or organization. You represent everybody. And he has an open mind and will listen to anybody and talk to anybody. He'll listen to what you have to say, and hopefully you'll sit there and listen to what he has to say. But one thing about it, he will always be respectful to you, and he'll be somebody you can be proud of. Now, some of you on the left, you're not going to be proud of anything. Sometimes not even proud of yourselves because you're disgusted with the way things have gone or didn't go your way. And that's a whole new world there. We won't even get into that because that's a show in itself. So we're going to leave that alone. But we're only going to do a 1 hour show tonight simply because, it's Thursday night. I usually try to do my shows on Tuesday night. And I got some things I got to get done that I hadn't been able to get to do the last 2 days. And because I've been trying to work on making sure I get the best sound and the best internet so we can do these shows. And next week, we're going to have some other folks on here, and we're going to generate some activity and get back into the swing of things. And just want to get out here and say, hey, I'm still here. I want to tell you, look at your candidates when you go to vote. Check them out. Make sure they're not defunders of the police. Like I said, it's amazing what you see and read out there and what you hear out there. And just remember, you defund the police, you're funding crime. You're increasing crime. If you don't take care of law enforcement, then law enforcement in no way can take care of you because it does cost. And these guys don't do it for money. They're in it because they love to do it. It's like anything else. Somebody said the other day, well, if something is in your blood, it's in your blood. People talk about music, rock and rollers, and all these bands. It's in their blood. They play, and that's what they do. That's only what they do. Yes, they're in it for the money, and they love to play. But when you're in law enforcement, if you stay in it and you call it you're in it for the money, you're missing the whole concept because you're not going to make any money. But if you're like the rest of us, I did my 35 years active, you're in it because you can make a difference. Sometimes it's only a little difference, But a little difference in somebody else's life becomes a bigger difference for somebody else. We have to go to the next level. We're there to defend, protect and defend our society against the ills of what they don't even see. I used to say the things that happen in nighttime, the things that society is protected from, society typically does not know or really does not have a clue. And all is well, because in law enforcement, that's what we did. That's what law enforcement officers do. They make it so you can rest at night and protect your family and get up the next day and be prosperous in a country designed for America and the Americans and our citizens in each one of our states of the United States. So, folks, remember one thing. It's your America. It's not the government's America. It's not the White House's America. It's your America. Owned by the people, for the people, by the people. And no matter what you do in life out there, always be real, always be right, and always, always be safe. And more importantly, look around, always be ready, because you never know when the wolf will be at your door. Have a good night, folks. Thank you for dropping in. And this concludes our show for the evening. And I'll be back Tuesday at 7 p.m. with a host of folks, and we'll have some conversations, and just never know who we might be talking to. I'll put that out. Have a good evening and a great weekend.